Please be seated. The court is now back in session. The floor is given to Nunti's defense to put questions to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, good morning, Your Honours. Good morning, Counsel. Good morning, Mr. Witness. My name is Victor Koppa. I am the International Counsel for Nguyen Chia. I don't have very many questions, just a few follow-up questions. This morning, you testified that you knew all the cadres in Sector 103. Did you mean that literally? Did you really know all the cadres in that sector?
As I stated, during the first administration and Taman as the sector chairman, I knew most of them, but under Takam supervision, I only knew Takam.
But when you say you knew all the cadres in Sector 103, did you mean to say that you also knew mid-level cadres, low-level cadres, soldiers belonging to the armed forces, the revolutionary armed forces, for instance?
The cadres whom I knew were at the sector level, the district level, and some of the military commander at the battalion level situated along the border. But I would not know the cadres at the village level. I knew some cadre at the cooperative level.
Apparently I wasn't heard, Mr. Witness, so I will repeat my question. In your OCIJ statement, you also referred to Sector 106. My question to you is if you also, in those times, between 1970 and 79, knew cadres, revolutionary soldiers in Sector 106.
As for Sector 106, I knew the chief of the sector, that is Sot, and a member of the sector by the name of Sien. When I went to the sector, I would have meal with Sien at his place. So over there I met Sot and Sien.
Would you be able to expand a little bit on your knowledge of the things that happened in Sector 103 between 1970 and 1979? Were you well aware of things that took place in Sector 103?
Regarding the situation that I experienced from 1970 through 1972-73. There were aerial bombardments along the road from Stang Trang crossing to Previhier. There will be 52 planes, for example, and there was a big flood in 1972 as well. And the third point that I recall is that on the 17th April 1975, Cambodia was liberated, and the Revolutionary Army of Cambodia liberated the country, and subsequently, as I stated earlier, there were changes of cadres within the sector, and there were arrests in 1977. These are the things that I observed and experienced during this period.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. You were asked yesterday by the prosecution if Lon Nol soldiers or officials or policemen were considered enemies. And in reply to that question, you've testified that after 17 April, Lon Nol officials and soldiers stayed in cooperatives and were not purged. Now, would you be able to explain how you knew or how you know that these Lon Nol officials or soldiers were not purged?
As far as I know, government officers in Previhier sector, besides the soldiers who fled up the Previhier mountain, were not arrested. However, there were a few arrests, as I could understand. And in fact, I myself was a former teacher of the old regime. But Angka spared me, and then I was assigned to work within the movement of Democratic Cambodia.
When you say that a few soldiers were arrested, are these the ones that you were referring to yesterday when you testified that they were not purged and stayed in cooperatives?
Soldiers were not in their respective units. They were dispersed into the villages, into the cooperatives, and living as ordinary people, engaging in the agricultural production.
Do you know anything about execution of former Lon Nol soldiers or former Lon Nol officials in Sector 103 in the period up to the liberation in 75 and afterwards?
I did not know much about that. I only knew what happened in the area where I stayed. Former government officials, police, and soldiers lived mixed with the people in the cooperatives. Some former Lunol soldiers got the job as a repairman or drivers for the sector, in fact.
You said earlier, Mr. Witness, that you knew at least many cadres and even military, revolutionary military in Sector 103. Have you ever heard from one of these cadres or soldiers, both within the period of 75, 79 or much later, about executions in Sector 103 of Lonol officials or Lonol soldiers?
I could not grasp the entire situation. However, as I knew, some Lunol soldiers fled to take refuge at the Pravihir temple. And in 1975, Phnom Penh was liberated on the 17th April. And Pravihir temple was liberated on the 27th of April 1975, and I did not know what happened to those soldiers who were staying at the Pravihir temple. As for the rest who fled up to the mountain, they came down and lived mixed together with the villagers in various villages and cooperatives. Regarding the revolutionary soldiers who were arrested in Sector 103, I knew a little bit only about that.
Have you heard from cadres that you knew in Sector 103 or in Sector 106 about a policy in place during the DK regime of tracing down or tracking down Lonol officials and have them executed simply because they had been members of the former Lonol administration?
As far as I know, the situation was that the former Lunol officers and soldiers, including teachers, were not gathered up and killed in Sector 103. They were not. As for the tracking down or arrested here and there, it was beyond my grasp.
My question, Mr. Witness, specifically referred to Sector 106 and whether you knew about a policy of rounding up, finding former Lonol officials, former Lonol soldiers in Sector 106. Have you heard anything in that period about that or at a later stage?
Yes, I stated I could not grasp the situation in Sector 106, which was not my sector. I only knew the chairman of the sector and a member, but not the activities within the sector regarding the gather up or the soldiers or the purchase. I didn't know about any of these matters. And regarding these aspects as well in Sector 103, I only knew a little bit about that, not the details.
I understand, and I understand, Mr. Witness, that you're trying to distinguish between your knowledge in the particular period, 1970-1979. Have you heard later, in the 80s or the 90s, or even in the 2000s, or the years thereafter, about execution of Lon Nol officials or soldiers within the former sectors 103 and 106?
After 1975, up to the later years, including the year 2000, I was not within Sector 106, but of course I heard people talking about other sectors, about the fighting and about the attacks in various other sectors and about the purges. But I personally did not know the details of those activities in these sectors, including the Siem Reap sector or the Privy sector.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. I'll move on to my second and last subject. Yesterday you have been testifying about a meeting during which Nguyen Chia was present. You have testified that he spoke about rice production, building of dams, etc. Do you remember how Nguyen Chia introduced himself before he started speaking briefly at this meeting?
To my recollection, he opened the meeting at the Tumloapa office. He only announced about the situation and about the changes or the transformation from sector into zone, and later on he went to visit the dams and to visit my office and the place where I work. He touched briefly only on the rice production, on the output between 3.5 tons to 7 tons per hectare.
I understand. But my question to you was, do you remember how he introduced himself before he started speaking? Or did others introduce him and said before he started speaking, this is Mr. So-and-so? Do you remember that?
Through my recollection, he did not introduce himself. He only introduced Kong Chap Ellis Sai as the chairman of the new North Zone. And that's all I can remember regarding the introduction.
If he didn't introduce himself, then I presume he was introduced. Maybe not. But how do you know that at that particular meeting it was in fact Nguyen Chia who was speaking to the people who were attending that meeting?
In fact, the people living in Prabhupada knew that he was the president of the assembly, and there was a woman representing the Prabhupada area knew him very well. And from that on, we knew him.
So do I understand that you knew that the person who was addressing the meeting was Nguyen Chia in a later stage, that you heard about that from somebody else later? Do I understand that correctly?
No, that was not correct. I knew him as Nguyen Chia before that meeting.
How did you know Nguyen Chia before that meeting?
Before the meeting, and when I attended the meeting, I saw him there.
I apologize, Mr. Witness, for keeping asking questions about this subject, but I still am not able to find out from your answers how you knew that the person in speaking in front of that meeting was in fact Nguyen Chia.
In fact, I got to know him through other people because Lê, one of his bodyguards, was from the same village. So I knew that bodyguard, and then I knew him.
Had you seen with your own eyes Nguyen Chia before you saw him at this meeting that we were speaking about?
Before the meeting at Sector 103, I never met him in person. I only knew of him through the information relayed by the chief of the sector and his bodyguard, as I stated, the person whose name is Lê from Sector 103.
And was this Lê present during the meeting that you are referring to?
Lê did not attend the meeting because he was on his protection duty.
But if Lê wasn't present and you hadn't seen Nguyen Chia before and the person speaking wasn't introduced, how do you know that during the meeting the person that was speaking about rice production was in fact Nguyen Chia?
As I just stated, I knew him through other people, and I also heard of his name on the radio broadcast as he was the president of the Assembly of Democratic Cambodia.
So the person that was speaking during this meeting, of whom you're saying that was Nguyen Chia, how was he referred to? What name was being used to describe the particular person? Did they say this is Nguyen Chia, or what was his name in your recollection?
I cannot recall that. However, he was known as Brother Number 2.
Did you know that then, or do you know that now? Did you have that knowledge when he was speaking, or did you hear that much later?
As far as I know, people talk about a Brother Number 2, that is referred to him prior to the meeting. I heard of that title given to him when the sector went for the meeting with the Central Committee in Phnom Penh.
Did you ever hear anybody during that meeting addressing him as Brother Number 2, or did they use another name?
To my recollection, all the phrase Brother Number 2 was not used during the meeting.
My last question on this particular subject, and I'll move on. But I'm trying again to have you recollect what particular name was used to address him. Was it Brother Chia? Was it Brother Nuon? Was it Nuon? Was it Chia? Was it... Do you remember?
President, witness, observe, pause, and the prosecution, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I object. The question is repetitive. This has been asked a number of times. The witness has provided his recollection of the meeting, and he's also indicated on multiple times that Nguyen Chia came to his office after. So I think counsel has exhausted this. This is repetitive.
Mr. President, if the witness doesn't answer the particular question, then I'll keep on asking from other directions, but I'll move on. Mr. Witness, do you remember how many people were attending this particular public meeting when you say Nguyen Chia was addressing and speaking about rice production? How many people were in the room?
Response. There were people including Uncle Nguyen Chia, Kong Chap, and Brother Hong. when Hong was overly in charge of the meeting, and he invited cadres from district level and from other work sites to attend the meeting. There were about 50 people.
Do you remember when the meeting was over? What happened? I remember you said you didn't have lunch. Did you see Nguyen Chia leave? Can you recall what happened when the meeting was finished?
Response. The meeting could be concluded by 11 a.m., if I still remember correctly, and it was Hung who was in charge of arranging where people who attended the meeting would have meals. Some ate at the place of the meeting, and some had to return home.
Were you able to see where Nguyen Chia went after the meeting was concluded?
Response. After that meeting, Nguyen Chia visited my work site where we cultivated the dry season rice, and he also went to the kitchen at my work site, and he even invited or asked Son to prepare him some pickle so that he could have it with meal, with rice. And he said he didn't like pork or beef, then this pickle.
When he was visiting the work site, did he speak to you?
Response. I was working at the work site when he paid the visit, and one of my children had to accompany him back or had to tour him during the time when he visited the work site, and I still recall him wearing a sarong rather than a checked sarong rather than a normal pants.
Do you remember when he spoke, if he had a particular accent, a particular Khmer accent?
Response. He spoke like the way he did, with some kind of husky voice, and he talked to us, and I still remember the wordings when he talked about 3.5 to 7 tons per hectare. These words still are in my memory.
Were you able to understand from the way he spoke from which region in Cambodia he came?
សេងថាតើសំឡេងនិយាយរបស់គាត់ជាអ្នកសៀមរាបជាអ្នកខាងណាទៅលោកអាចប្រាប់បានទេសំឡេងគាត់នោះ
Response. I can tell that he spoke like people in Battambang are speaking now, the same dialect.
When Nguyen Chia finished his pickle, did he leave the sector 103?
ចាក់ចេញពីតំបន់103ហ្នឹងឬក៏ដូចបន្តិច
Response. I do not know about this. I knew that he attended the meeting and then paid a visit to my work site, but when he left the vicinity is not known to me, but I am sure that he did not spend so much time at the work site.
Yesterday, the prosecution asked you about a passage in your statement to the OCIJ. That would be the answer number 10 to a question that relates to a secret meeting which was attended to by Nguyen Chia, Kang Chop, Ta Kim and Ta Sarun. If you're saying that he left after he had his pickle with rice, am I to understand that this meeting that you're referring to did not take place at that very same day?
មិនមែនប្រជុំនៅថ្ងៃដដែលទេពីព្រោះថាលោកថាឃើញគាត់ហូបបាយជាមួយជ្រក់ស្ពៃហើយក៏បានចាក់ចេញតើអាចនឹងប្រជុំកើតដូចម្ដេចបើគាត់ចាក់ចេញនោះសូមលោកពន្យល់
Response. I did not actually see him when he was having his meal, but I knew that he brought some of the pickle from my place, and where he ate it, I don't know.
Let me ask it in a different way. When was this secret meeting that you have been referring to, which was attended to by Nguyen Chia?
លោកនួនជាក៏ចូលរួមដែរនោះ
Response. I, based on my analysis, can only say about that because in each meeting there was a level of secrecy, and that the meeting was convened among the cadres and the senior leaders, but the meeting was not informed to other people other than the circle.
But the meeting that you're speaking about, which you refer to as secret, did it take place the same day or much later? Do you remember?
ចាំទេការប្រជុំនោះប្រជុំនៅថ្ងៃដដែលឬក៏មួយខែចុងក្រោយមក
Response. I don't know about this, but I can say that the meeting was convened within a period of 1 month, when Kim and Sai were appointed, and later on we could see a new person was installed and the predecessors of that person disappeared.
So, Mr. Witness, are you now saying that the meeting, the so-called secret meeting, took place a month after this meeting that we have been speaking about, during which Nguyen Chia spoke about rice production? So the secret meeting was a month later, correct?
Response. I do not remember the exact time, and indeed after that meeting that was convened in that sector, there would be another meeting elsewhere, I don't know, but again, as I already emphasized, any new meeting would never be convened more than a month after the first meeting.
Are you now, Mr. Witness, speculating about when this alleged secret meeting took place? Or do you know?
Response. It was based on my speculation and an analysis rather than witnessing this actual meeting.
And is it based on the same analysis and speculation that you're saying that this alleged meeting was a secret meeting? Emphasizing the word secret.
Response. It is true that the meeting was part of the secret meeting because I did not attend such meeting, and it was meant for senior leaders.
But are you able to explain the chamber how you know for certain that a meeting took place, a secret meeting between brackets, to which Nguyen Chia attended maybe a month after the public meeting?
Response. I don't know because the meeting was a secret one.
Well, exactly that was my point, Mr. Witness. Isn't this secret meeting in fact a figment of your imagination?
Response. I say this based on my understanding of the types of meetings during the Democratic Cambodia, because there were two kinds of meetings, the public meetings and the secret meeting.
I'm sure, Mr. Witness, there were public meetings and there were secret meetings. But I put it to you that you have in fact no knowledge whatsoever of an alleged secret meeting to which Nguyen Chia, Ta Kang Chap, Ta Kim and Ta Sarun attended. Is that correct?
ខឹមនឹងតាសរុននោះខ្ញុំចង់បញ្ជាក់លោកឲ្យលោកបញ្ជាក់ជំរាបតុលាការនោះថាមានមែនឬក៏មិនមានបាទ
Response. I don't know how to respond to your question, but secret meetings would be convened, and that without such meetings, Kim, who was the Secretary of Sector, would never have the instructions to convey to his subordinates, after all.
Mr. Witness, you're again giving an answer in general terms. What I would like to put to you one more time, one last time, is that there wasn't a secret meeting taking place to which Nguyen Chia attended. Isn't that correct?
The President, Mr. Witness, you are now directed not to respond to the question as it is really repetitive. The President, Counsel, you may also understand that witness used the terms speculation, and he most of the time said in this testimony that he speculates. In Khmer, as we know, it's precisely clear that he already answering your questions, and the chamber wishes not to hear more from your repetitive question.
Thank you, Mr. President. If it is clear to you that the witness has been speculating all along, then I'm very happy today. Thank you.
The President, Counsel for Mr. Kyew Sompon, you may now proceed.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is not in relation at all to the witness. I just have learned through your greffier that there is a civil party who was scheduled to appear for tomorrow who is available today, and I've just learned that this individual has been summoned at our request, and that we shall not require very much time for his examination. This is simply for your information.
The President, thank you, Counsel, for informing the bench, and the Chamber also envisages that we would like to hear the witness this afternoon if the testimony on through video link could be concluded earlier than expected. Mr. Prumsu, your testimony session now comes to an end. You are now excused. The court is very grateful to your attendance. We appreciate your patience and efforts in responding to all the questions put by the bench and the parties to the proceedings. We believe that your testimony may help ascertain the truth, and with that we wish you all the very best. Court officer is now directed to assist Mr. Prum Sun and make sure he is returned home safe and sound. The Chamber wishes to inform the public and parties to the proceedings that this afternoon the Chamber is hearing the testimony of TCW 84 through video link. The session will convene at 1:30 and the session will not be concluded until 5 p.m. if need be. Security personnel are now directed to bring Mr. Kyo Sompon to his holding cell and have him return to the courtroom in the afternoon before 1:30 p.m. The court is adjourned.
សូមចេញក្រោកឈរ